So one of the first cuts of meat I take out of these deer is the tenderloin. The tenderloin is on the inside of the backbone, between the ribs and the hip. And there's a little piece of meat there, and it's the tenderloin. It's the tenderest part of the deer. It's probably the best flavored, best eating cut of the deer, but it's not very big. And basically we just cut along the backbone. And to tell you the truth, there's a lot of people that don't know this cut is here or that it's even worth going after. It's definitely worth going after. I skinned a few when I was young and didn't know this needed to be taken out. Didn't do it. And there is our tenderloin, and that'll get all the fat and stuff off of it, and then it'll make a really good little steaks. But the cats want the fat right now. Oh, the chickens are gonna whip them. Here you go, chicken.
She'll come to you.
Who, the cat? Come here, girl. Come here. Come here. Next cut we'll make is we'll take the front shoulders off. So you start right here in the armpit.
You're going to have to turn. There you go.
And a lot of times where a good kill shot is to place a deer, you end up with some damage in here. But we start in the armpit, we start cutting. You can kind of find where the shoulder is a little bit separate from the rib cage. And you go behind the scapula here. Be careful not to get into that piece of meat up against the backbone. And we've taken the front shoulder off. And it's got a little damage underneath, but I think we can still save most of this meat. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. Alright, there's our other front shoulder.
Alright, so we have taken the front shoulder and the tenderloin, both front shoulders and both tenderloins out. And we're gonna work on getting them cut up. And we've got some good cool temperatures here in Kansas this week. So we're gonna let the deer hang out here and in the cool air, and it's gonna age well. Deer doesn't need to age. It doesn't have enough intermuscular fat to worry about that much, but I like it to get cool. And so it'll continue to chill. And this meat is already, from just hanging out here about 8 hours, it's already so cold it makes your hands cold. So it'll continue to chill, and we may get to the rest of it this evening or tomorrow morning. Probably tomorrow morning we'll get to the rest of this. But right now we're gonna
Alright, we're going to cut up this front shoulder, and the first place I cut up usually is off the top of the shoulder blade. Off the top of the shoulder blade, and I just cut along the inside of the shoulder blade and take that meat off. And that's a chunk, and we'll do something with that in a minute. And then right here, I go right down to there's a tall ridge part of the shoulder blade right here. I go in along it and just feel it with my knife. I like this fillet knife for deboning. It works really well. When I get that come off here, I come down to the flat part of the shoulder blade, and I run my knife along the shoulder blade there, the bone, and I just pull the meat back. And I'll do that till I get this piece of meat off here. I prefer on my game meat, and I've fed lots of kids and lots of people who say, "Ooh, I don't like game meat." But I prefer on my game meat to take it all off the bone, to get the fat off of it, anything that might give it an off flavor. And so that's how you're going to see me doing this. If you like that game flavor, if you don't mind it, or if you're cutting up something that's not game, a lamb or a goat or something, don't worry about getting it all off the bone. You can saw roasts out of this if you want. But I'm going to debone all of it. I don't know if you can see that well, but see how our shoulder blade, I took the muscle off the top, and I'm taking the muscle off of right here. And we've got that cut here. Now, when we get this part laid out, I'll continue right here, and I'll find this bone right here. I'll find this bone, and I'll cut right along it and take all that meat off in one piece. So that piece of meat came off of the shoulder blade. Shoulder blade here, and up here to the leg. And that's how we got this piece of meat. Okay, I'm going to lay that to the side along with this other one. Then I'll come to the front of this bone, and I'll just come from the back side and start to fillet off that meat that where we cut off the other muscle. Cut right here, all the way to the bone. Set that to the side. cut off some of the little pieces you missed. And you can go back and pick this as clean as you want, or if you've got patience to. Some people would like to cook it with the bones so they can get all the meat off of it when they cook. Like I said, we prefer the way the texture and the flavor of the meat when it's all deboned. We like that better. And then all this little stuff that I'm cutting off, that can all be ground. All this little stuff can be ground, and we'll might be able to make sausage out of that. Alright, the underneath side, the side that was against the rib cage of the shoulder blade. Come right here to the knee joint, or to the end of that shoulder blade joint. And then you start peeling that. Now in all this, and I'll probably get to that some on the other side, but this tends to be where a lot of times your shot placement has caused damage, up in here. And I'm going to tell you that rather than eat a piece of meat that tastes bloodshot and doesn't taste good, cut it off and throw it away. Feed it to your dogs, feed it to your hogs, feed it to your chickens, put it in your compost pile, feed it to the coyotes or the crawdads, but don't eat it. For one thing, you might get bullet fragmentation in there, and you don't want to be eating lead, you don't want to be eating the copper, you don't want to bite down on that, you don't want to cut your mouth with that. If you shot it with a broadhead, a lot of times the modern broadheads will break apart in a shoulder blade, and you don't want those pieces, they will cut you. So be careful as you're doing this. Throw away the bloodshot and bad pieces, and keep the good clean meat. Then we'll take this foreleg and go down the bone of the foreleg here. And I've pretty much all of my adult life, save for a few short periods, I have had a cow dog or a hunting dog around, and this makes good dog feed right here. So that's what will happen with these bones, with a piece of little bit of meat left on them. That's dog feed, and the dogs love it. Okay, and you'll do the same thing with the other side. Our two big muscle groups that we cut off of the shoulder blade itself. Okay, this one, sometimes called the chuck. It's the big muscle off the back of the leg and the top of the shoulder, bottom of the shoulder blade. we're going to cut the little chunks of fat and the silver skin off of it. Anything that looks like it got bullet damage. And let me tell you that you can take this, and once you get it all cleaned up and you clean this silver skin here off of it, clean that tendons and stuff off of it right there. This does make a fairly good steak. Cut them thin. Really good for fajitas. Really good if you've got a tenderizing mallet or however. Tenderize them. You can tenderize them with the bottom of a coffee cup if you're careful. Tenderize them, and then you can make chicken fried steak out of them. They're pretty good steak cut. I mean, it's not backstrap, but it's a decent steak cut. You can take and trim all this stuff off of it, and in here I'll trim all that off of it, and then you can roll it up and make a, roll it up like this. Take some cotton twine, not nylon, cotton, and you can tie it like that and make a decent roast out of it. Makes a nice boneless roast, but you've got to clean all this off first, all the bloodshot, and it does make a decent rolled chuck roast. It's nice if you want to stuff it with some things, onions and peppers and stuff, and roll it. It's a good chuck or good roast for that. I'm making 3 things out of this deer today. I'm making sausage, stew meat, and steaks. So this is probably going to get cut mostly into stew meat. My steaks that I'm going to keep today are just the back strap and the tenderloin, and the rest of it's going to get made into stew meat. Oh, my 4th thing. I'm going to make some jerky today too. So there is some good pieces in here that I'll use for jerky too. But jerky and stew meat, and then some grinding for my sausage. So we'll just continue to clean this up. I don't know if you can see how clean and pretty that looks with that silver skin and tendons cut off of it and bloodshot cut off of it. Same thing back here. So this little piece right here, really nice clean piece, we'll cut it right there at that tendon seam. And this, you can make steaks out of it, but let me tell you, there is a big piece, a big tendon in the middle of this. It kind of a piece of gristle basically in the middle of this. Let's see, I'll start right here. And if you fillet all this off of that tendon, see that? That's not going to hurt your flavor a whole lot if you leave it in there, but it does make a tough piece, especially if you're making like chicken fried steak. Try to get away from that because it'll leave something tough in your middle of your steak. Alright, take that piece and we're going to cube this for stew meat, just like that. Then turn around here like that. And Cindy will end up canning this for stew meat. We really like canned deer stew meat, and it gets used for everything. It gets put on rice more than it gets put in stew. So that is an important way we store deer meat, is to can it. And we'll do the same thing over here. Now, if you want to take that and tenderize it, it makes a good chicken fried steak. It really does. It's good flavored. It's got some weight to it. It's got some strength to it, but it's not so tough after you tenderize it that it's not edible. It's really good. And that makes a good chicken fried steak. It also makes good jerky. It also makes good stew meat. So that's part of the shoulder. And the other part, you just continue to do the same thing with this shoulder. You're basically just cutting silver skin off and either cutting it into steaks or into chunks for stew meat or into grind. And that's kind of what you do with the shoulders. Okay, I don't know if you can see it. There's a really bloody bloodshot piece right there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run my knife under the silver skin and tendons here, and I'm going to cut out, cutting kind of deep, and see, most of that was just on top. It's not down in there. So I'll just cut it off. And see, that left me a really nice piece of meat under there still. And that's important to kind of investigate that a little bit before you start just cutting chunks off and throwing them away. You could have cleaned all this up and rolled it up and made a nice roast, but we're making stew meat today and jerky. And so that's what we're doing here. I'm not terribly hung up on textures. But when I'm eating stew, I hate to be eating along, really enjoying chomping up the potatoes and the carrots and the good pieces of meat, and then hit a really chewy piece of meat that just seems to grow in my mouth and I can't get it chewed up and I can't get it swallowed. That's why I try to cut that stuff off. Yes, you could just chop it up and technically it's not going to hurt anybody, but I just don't enjoy it. And these pieces of silver skin that I've cut off the top of that, I will come back before I put them in my scrap bucket and just try to scrape most of the meat off of them that if I cut too deep or whatever. Scrape the meat off of them and put them in. Put that meat in my grind bowl that I'll have out here in a minute. And then that goes in my scrap. Which I need to go find a scrap bucket. So, do that with all these big pieces of shoulder, the foreleg, some of those pieces. You're going to just try to cut the big chunks of silver skin off of them, like the big tendon there, so that it doesn't just fillet the bigger pieces off, and chop it up where you can run it through your grinder. Your grinder will catch a lot of the silver skin. If you've got a good grinder, it'll catch a lot of that. And that's how you do a front shoulder. And we'll get some more footage of the rest of it here in a little bit. Right now I've got to go feed the dogs and find a scrap bucket. So, there you go.